Well, if it isn't you again. Hello, everybody. It's Dragoncast. I'm your host, Jamie East, joined by, well, you're not the cum-encrusted feet of Larry Strong anymore. I think you're just Chris Mandle. We're in between seasons.
I am the washed-up carcass of Luke Valerian.
That'll be all bloated and grey. And just a little explainer, it is home of House of the Dragon and always will be, but obviously there is no House of the Dragon to talk about this week. So we have decided to keep the podcast going in some way, shape or form. I'll tell you a bit more about that in just a second. But first, Chris, how you been? How's your week been?
It's been good. Well, it's been a really busy kind of week because everyone's been talking about the finale and we've had there's just been a lot to talk about even after we did the pod. I did an interview with Emma Darcy to talk about the finale for GQ.
Which really, that took off as well, didn't it?
It
Both
blew
you, Paddy,
up.
and your other.
Yeah, it was all over Reddit and people were quoting stuff. And then I also reviewed the finale for the Financial Times.
Look, as you do.
It's about time I was in that paper, isn't it, really? You know, what I know about stocks and stonks and things, I'm surprised I haven't been in sooner.
SEO is a weird thing, isn't it? Because it's turned, every kind of online publication, now just writes about whatever is popular.
Yeah.
You know, I thought I'd just do a quick Google to have a look and see if there was any House of the Dragon news that I'd not picked up on. And Town and Country magazine were tweeting about the start date of season 2. And it's just my God, people are just so thirsty for clicks. It's just stay in your lanes. It's niche is better.
Everybody wants to be involved, don't they?
Town and Country don't need to be gathering House of Dragons fans. You know, I go to Town and Country for my Town and Country news. We
go to Town and Country to find out about the hottest bachelors who have got land. Sort of gentry. That's what we go there for. It was really interesting doing House of the Dragon for the FT because the sort of editor did say, you know, our readers are watching, but they're not super fluent in everything. So we need to talk about it broader, and we want to sort of take the temperature of it on a sort of zoomed out, which was kind of interesting. Okay. So we weren't getting into the nuts and bolts of what it all means, but also just trying to figure out what the show's done and the impact. And it was interesting because I think, that's all the last week has just been reflecting on House of the Dragon, and now we begin the long wait until season 2, which is going to be excruciating.
Well, I mean, let's have a bit of I'm put a bit of a news bed here because this is going to be the news section at the beginning of everything. We'll catch up on what House of the Dragon news is there. Okay, there's not a lot of news really. I think the main news is that as we predicted, it's almost certainly not going to come back until at least spring 2024. Mm-hmm. That's right. That's what I've heard. Also, I think Ryan Condell spoke and said they're aiming to start filming early 2023. And filming, it's easily 4 to 6 months of filming. And then you've got all the dragons to make as well.
So much in post-production now.
Realistically, easily going to be. I'm still holding out for April 2024.
I think I think that's a sort of reasonable timeline. I think also it's worth thinking the first season was sort of filmed in lockdown, so a lot of it was done in sort of controlled stages. But I just think when we think of Game of Thrones, we associate it going to all these different countries. So actually, it might be that they are going out and doing location stuff next year, which might take longer. That might be the reason it's sort of going to be a bit longer than compared to season 1 of House of the Dragon, for example. So, lots to think about and lots to do.
If they are, thinking about locations and stuff, if you were planning on going on holiday in 2023, Malta, Croatia, all of the old Thrones locations will still be there. If you want a place to look a bit like Dawn, Malta is still going to look like Dawn,
Yeah.
Pentos, all of those ones. Where was it was Dawn, was it? Where was Croatia? Was that Dawn? I seem to remember.
I think
Daenerys
Dawn was Valencia. Wasn't it in Spain? I think they did
May have been, yeah. A lot of it was in the old town of Dubrovnik.
Yes, Dubrovnik was early King's Landing. And I think I've told you this before, maybe not on the pod, but when I saw you the other week. But years ago, when season 6 of Game of Thrones came out, HBO sent a few journalists on a press trip to go around some of the key locations. And so we went to Belfast and we did Northern Ireland, and we got to see where like Winterfell set is and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And that was really cool. And then there were some parts, I'm just going to try and think if I get this right. There were some parts, particularly on the coast, where they filmed some parts from season 6 where Arya is in Bravos and she's running away from that assassin lady. It's like, you remember that sort of Terminator? Yeah, I remember that. And the episode ends with Arya kind of getting like stabbed and falling in the water. And you're like, oh, has she died? And then the next episode, she gets out and she's on a harbour. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to remember the order of this. So some of that chase was filmed in Ireland, and one bit was filmed in Barcelona. So this press trip, we went to Barcelona for one day from Dublin,
just to see where Arya floated for like 20 seconds.
I've got a bit of elastic cough. Yeah, exactly. So we basically went, and then we walk along and we do this walking tour, and this person goes, that is where we shot the one shot where Arya gets out of the water. We came all this way to do that. I thought, wow, you guys really do go everywhere for the perfect location.
That is very cool. And you know, so I went to Dubrovnik just before the final season of Thrones, and it is like walking around. You do recognise so much. That's where the Shame Walk was.
Yes.
There's the tower. There's the tower there also where Daenerys went in to look for the baby dragons.
Oh yes, well. The House of the
what was it called?
The House of Dying or something? Yeah,
yes,
in
Carth. Yeah. That's Carth. That was it.
Yeah, Carth.
And there's also a lot of the bays and harbours in Dubrovnik as well. You recognise from King's Landing and stuff like that. So also, you know, we are going to see Winterfell. So
I know. I think that's going to be really cool.
They're going to go back. Cool. They're going to go back to Belfast again. So, and there's loads of, you know, Belfast is and the whole of Northern Ireland is fantastic for Thrones tours. If you ever want to go and meet some of the original direwolves, there's a great tour that we can go and actually sit with the direwolves and stroke them. And there's a place in Newcastle where the forest there's a great road where the trees are all kind of like arched over the road.
Yes, I've been there. Yeah, and it was the entrance to King I think it was early on in the show, maybe season 2, when Tyrion goes, it was maybe season 4 when the Dornish, when what's that really sexy guy called the Red Viper. What's he called? When he arrives.
Pedro Pascal.
Pascal. How did I forget his name? Yeah. Beautiful man on the planet. And they go through where those trees kind of arch, don't they? It's a stunning place. Yeah.
And you can go and, in fact, friends of mine got married in the spot where the Stark children found the direwolves in the first episode.
Wow. That would be a fun job, wouldn't it? Being a location scout.
Oh, God, imagine. Just like
that is like a really cool job.
The thing is, they'd be like, Jamie, you've done 3 films now, and every single one of them would ended up filming in like 6-star hotels.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
this is why the White Lotus is a stroke of genius, because the premise is a beautiful 6-star hotel.
Yeah.
And it's like we have
the kind
to film.
Of show I would write.
Yeah, exactly. We have to film on location.
All-inclusive 6-star.
We have to stay there. Yeah. It's genius. It's genius.
Yeah. What were we saying? House of Dragon news. That's right. Weird, again, clickbaity, odd news. Henry Cavill responds to House of Dragon season 2 casting rumour. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. There's no way on earth that Henry Cavill would be in Thrones universe. He's just left The Witcher.
Especially now he's just left The Witcher, which seems to be some sort of clause has kicked in with Superman, hasn't it? Because he was in Black Adam's credit scene. That seems to have had some knee-jerk thing where he's been booted off The Witcher. I mean,
it's also one of those articles and rumours that's just been started just by someone going, "Are you going to be in House of the Dragon?" They've gone, "No." Yeah. And then the article is like, Henry Cavill denies House of the Dragon rumours. That you started, Mr. Journalist.
I think, I know we can't really get into like casting for season 2 because we don't know who's in it, but we do know that they are going up to Winterfell, and we know that the Lord, I think he's called Cragen Stark. Young guy.
A lot of people speculating who that's going to be already.
I don't know much about him, but I do think Joe Cole, who is in
I was literally just about to say Joe Cole.
Were you?
I was just literally about to say Joe Cole. See, that's why we're together on this podcast.
Yeah, don't you think he'd be good? Now, I don't know. It's weird because Joe Cole is the spitting image of my friend Josh, who's from Manchester. And
okay,
so
Josh
when
cheaper, I bet.
Yeah, Josh might be around actually to do it if Joe can't. But like Joe, I could see being quite a good sort of northern. But is he? Where's Joe Cole from? Is he London?
You know what? I've interviewed him.
I can't tell.
I've hosted the Peaky Blinders premiere. I think he's kind of like generic Englishman.
Right. Okay.
But,
That's
he's done Manchester. He's done Brummie.
Exactly.
For
Peakies.
He's done a kind of generic kind of London accent for Gangs of
London. Who else if we're doing like kind of like familial northern young guy, would anyone else come to mind? I think we should just get Joe Cole the job, to be honest.
Yeah, just give it to Joe Cole. We are interesting. We've got a bonus episode coming out later on this week, where I speak to Shoppe, who is who's the lead actor in Gangs of London. If you're watching that now, great series. I caught up with him last week because he's a massive Dragons and Thrones fan. So that will be coming up next week. But I'll tell you a bit more about that in a bit. This is going to sound like mad, right? Someone who I think would be brilliant casting. In the same way that we got Dennis Pennis in Game of Thrones. Do you remember Reg from The Bill?
Of course.
Okay, what was his name? Hold on a second. Reg from The Bill. His name is Jeff Stewart. Yeah. So if you Google Reg from The Bill now. Yeah. So if you go on to and Google Reg from The Bill now and just go straight to images. Go straight to Google Images.
Straight to Google Images.
Straight to Google Images. Do not pass go.
No. Okay. Loading. Okay.
So look at Reg from The Bill now, in all his resplendent hair and beard.
Looks like he's been electrocuted.
He would look fucking brilliant as a Stark.
Oh, yeah.
Or as a Knight of the Watch, or one of those. He's my left field one. I think this is where the campaign starts for Reg from The Bill.
Yeah, I love that. I could see him doing some Northern Lord.
Exactly.
Oh, very good. Well, there's also one more that I kind of wanted to flag is
go on.
Just because sometimes like basically if you're young and British, you could probably get a part on House of the Dragon, but we know that Jace is also going to House Arryn, who are at the in the Sky Tower in the Vale. And I sort of thought Phoebe Dynevor from Bridgerton would be a great sort of, because she looks a bit like Sansa, doesn't she, as well? Just as this
never watched it.
Sally Webster from Corrie, it's her daughter.
Yeah. Oh,
she'd be good as a sort of like someone in the Vale, as a sort of lady in waiting. I think she'd be quite a good main character. So again, wish we knew more about the source material at this point, but pure speculation.
The casting director will be listening.
Yes.
So in which case I would also like to officially put my name forward.
We should do the locations and we should cast it. My mate Josh can get a part. He'd be great.
Yeah. Reg from The Bill. I mean, won't quite get the headlines that they were hoping for. Maybe not Matt Smith level.
No. But you start small and you build up. It does make me wonder, though. We've been talking about the next steps. I would be quite keen before season 2 to read Fire and Blood and do a bit of a who's coming up. We've got loads of time. I'm a slow reader, but we've got loads of time.
That's a good idea. That is a good idea. I mean, I was always quite reticent. I wasn't allowed to read the Thrones books whilst Thrones was on. No, well, I was allowed. I could have. They wouldn't have sacked. Well, they may have sacked me. But it was more suggested that actually, because there was quite a lot of heated debate between book gang and TV gang, and it was decided that it would maybe alter my view on the TV show if I knew, for instance, about what was. We can talk about this. What was Catelyn Stark's character that she came back as?
Oh, Lady Stoneheart.
Lady Stoneheart. Yeah. You see, I found out about Lady Stoneheart mainly just because so many people were like desperately asking for her to be part. And you know what? I agreed with that. You know, for anyone that doesn't know what the fuck we're talking about, in the books, we all know Catelyn Stark died at the Red Wedding, had her throat cut by random soldier. Maybe it was the drummer from Coldplay. We don't know. And that was the end of her journey as far in the TV series. But in the books, she came back not as a white, but
they don't really sort of get into what she is, but
she comes back. Yeah, and she can't talk because of her throat's been cut. Yeah. And she comes back as this vengeful, kind of like not Catelyn Stark. She doesn't come back like, oh, I need to find Jon and give him a cuddle, or she's a pretty brutal character, wasn't she?
Yeah, she's found in the river 3 days after she's killed, so her body is slightly rotted, and she joins the Brotherhood Without Banners, who are the sort of the sort of vigilante group that patrol in season 3.
I love them in Thrones.
Gendry and Arya are with them at various points, I believe. So it's not really made clear in the books to what extent she's able to remember her family or her identity, but she's just set on killing the Freys and anyone involved in the Red Wedding. And she is known as Lady Stoneheart. And you hear about her, particularly in the 4th book, you hear about this name from other characters who are in the Riverlands, and you then the sort of twist is that it's Catelyn. I think they just thought, firstly, if she comes back to life, it might ruin the big thing when Jon Snow is brought back to life later.
True, yeah.
And I think a lot of what Arya did in the final season, which is, you know, this assassin sort of taking out the Freys, was probably what happens at Stoneheart. But yeah, it's one of those things that it's such a great moment in the books, but like the logistical job of getting the actor back for like one episode when their fee is probably quite high, and it's just like, you know, it just doesn't work, does it?
But there were some rumors going around, like Henry Cavill style rumors, and some amazing kind of like Photoshop people created these pictures. You'll be able to find them on Google now of Michelle Farley as Lady Stoneheart, and fucking hell, it looked great.
It would have been brilliant. I only got into the books.
Like you say, would have affected all of the other, too many other strands, I think.
Yeah, I think they just knew that it might temper the shock of Jon coming back to life, if anyone can come back to life. But then again, you know, I read that before it happened in the show. So the way that the show used "Is he dead or not" as a huge plot point between 5 and 6. You know, I'm kind of like, come on, you know. And do you remember he was doing all these interviews, Kit Harington, being like, "Oh, I've cut my hair off, like I've done."
It was nuts.
Yeah,
it was,
and you're just there, like, but you're making it. The expectations are getting set so high because you can't be like, duh, of course he's coming back.
He had to basically. So for the whole of the season where we didn't know if he'd come back, it wasn't just like, the thing was, it's not like a soap opera where they get one episode out of the way and they're still filming. He had to film that whole season without being spotted, which is fucking crazy. Yeah. So he was going berserk. He was going mad because everyone else was out on the piss in Belfast, all the other cast and crew and everything, and he had to just stay in the house that they'd rented for him for nearly a year. He just wasn't allowed to be,
you know, because all the press would be at the airport at Belfast, wouldn't they? This was the thing. It'd say, "Oh, Alfie Allen's been spotted there. Ewan Rion's been there." There was this cottage industry of just going, and it's. I think that's one of the things that, like, that's why they started getting drones to sort of shoot down cameras and stuff. You know, they had all this technology, didn't they? Because they were like,
Well, they did, but the best bit was at Titanic Studios in Belfast in the final season where they burnt down King's Landing. They're like, the whole thing gets turned to ash. And it's just over the road is like just a car park where just people just sat there eating apples and just kind of... Just like watch it. Oh, fucking hell! They've burnt down King's Landing. It was amazing.
I think it'd be interesting with House of the Dragon, like as it gets bigger, like how much they try and protect stuff. Because I think the best thing to do is to just surrender. Like, it's not healthy to police it to that extent. I remember interviewing cast members for the final season of Thrones, and the scripts deleted after you read them. They were on iPads, so you had to memorize the lines. I think there was
a lot of paranoia around at that time.
Yeah,
as well,
and wasn't it maybe Jamie Lannister? I think had an earpiece. He actually had to get his lines read to him, and they CGI'd it out and stuff.
Johnny Depp style. Wow.
Yeah. Because it was like on some of the big scenes, it was like you can't memorize it, and you can only read it once, and you just think I understand it,
that's
but also
crazy.
It's just getting silly. Like if you want to know what happens on House of the Dragon, you can find out. It's happened in the books.
Yes. That's probably one of the factors why it's been a bit more relaxed this time. I've loved all the behind the scenes pictures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Listen, we're just going off on tangents, which is fine because we've got about 2 years to fill. Thank you so much. We had so many entries to our little competition. HarperCollins in the UK very kindly sent a load of books, which you can see if you're watching this on YouTube behind me, all bagged up and ready to go. They've been clogging up in my studio for the past kind of like 8 weeks. Cannot wait to be rid of them. So, Chris, I have sent you... we picked these completely at random earlier on today. Mm-hmm. What I did was we have a box set, the whole box set of the Game of Thrones books. That's gone to the person who got the first correct answer on YouTube. We have the Songs of Ice and Fire, the Book of Ice and Fire, the one that's written by George and Elio and Linda. That's going to go to the first person that got the correct answer on Twitter. And then we've got 4 copies of the book. What's it? God, I'm going mad. What's the book? Hold up. That's called Fire and Blood. And the annual is called The World of Ice and Fire, all available on HarperCollins. We've got 4 copies of the novel to come out if you want to spoil it for yourself and find out what happens in House of the Dragon. So I'll go first. The box set. Give a big round of applause to Christine Bernard, who got the first correct answer on YouTube. Thank you very much. Well done. Thanks for your support, Christine. I'm going to DM you on YouTube. I guess you can do that. I hope so. And get your address and get that over to you. Chris, do you want to read out who won the annual? Who got that in Twitter?
Yeah, of course. The winner of the annual is Andrew Faramond.
Well done, Andrew. Well done, mate. Expect a DM from the Dragoncast account over the next 24 hours. And Sarah Young on Twitter, you win one of the books. Well done, Sarah. Hey. Chris?
Marcus Sweeney, congratulations. You've also won a book.
Well done, Marcus. Edward Wilcox over on YouTube. Edward, you've got a book. And finally...
B. Malone, congratulations, you've won a book as well.
B. Malone, what a great name as well. Love that name. So well done, you have all won something. Now, we're hoping to get a few more prizes soon. I know that the digital release of House of the Dragon has just come out. Chris, did you get sent anything through the post?
I got a very, very kind email from somebody at Warner Brothers saying, would you like a copy of the DVD? And I had to explain I do not own anything with a disc drive in it anymore, so I had to politely decline.
You know what? I'm pretty furious, actually. Hello, Warner Brothers. Jamie East here, long-time Thrones fan. Some might say co-presenter of Thronecast and Dragoncast, number one House of the Dragon podcast in the country. Not had one email. I'd love to give a prize away of the box set of House of the Dragon Season 1 to some of us. Also, there was some goodies being shipped out. Did you get any of the goodies? Did you get your...
Yeah,
you little fucker. I knew you did.
My Negroni Spagliato kit. Is that what you mean?
I don't drink alcohol. Yeah, that's exactly what I
Yeah.
mean. There are people, I've seen people on the grid, I've seen people's grids and stories receiving this. I know for a fact they've never fucking watched it.
Yeah.
Never watched it.
It's not enough to just follow the TikTok about Emma Darcy and Olivia Cook. You've got to be in the House of the Dragons business, really.
I know, and look, I know I'm a recovering alcoholic. That's by the by. I would not allow it in my house anyway, but it would still be nice to be asked.
Yeah.
HBO, Warner Brothers, Sky, Premier.
I will
whoever.
say it was delicious. I actually made some the week before for my boyfriend's birthday because we'd never had one before after all that toing and froing and watching this Negroni Spagliato. Yeah, I was like, we'll just make one. It's really good, actually. Yeah.
I could have a Negroni with no Secco. They are things that exist. M&S Fizz Zero is amazing.
Is that good? Is that
anyway
good? Anyway.
That's the best one. Fizz Zero from M&S is the best.
I felt like a right influencer though, because if you put on Instagram now, thanks for X, it automatically flags it and is like, have you been sent a gifted product? You have to declare it and you have to put a hashtag ad on there and everything. So I was just,
you do.
Yeah, I'm not.
I bet you were gleefully adding it.
I felt like Mrs. Hinch flogging some dusters.
Now, Chris, it's time for us to shit or get off the pot in terms of what the future holds for Dragoncast. And we've been kind of like mulling it over and working out what we're going to do and how we're going to kind of get through the next 18 months or so. And there's a few things that we've come up with ideas for, isn't that right? So
yeah.
A lot of people asking, and this isn't in a kind of like sense, for those asking, here's where I got my top from, little pretty things. A lot of people have genuinely asked that we cover Game of Thrones in the same way that we covered House of Dragon. Few lunatics suggested that we go back and do an entire rewatch of Thrones. It still feels too soon for me to do that. It feels like a lot. And also I think people get a little bit bored. So here's what we're going to do, I think, Chris, and I hope you agree. We're going to take... each season, I think we could do 3 episodes from each season. What do you think to that? They're easily, like 3 classic episodes from each season of Game of Thrones. That feels like a good sizable chunk, doesn't it? That we can rewatch. We've got all of the episodes that we'll do a kind of like recap bit that we'll put in there from our sister podcast previously on. We can just drop that in so that everyone can get up to speed. And then we'll go through it as well. And I think we will also incorporate you guys so you'll know in advance which one we're going to watch for next week, right? And you can watch it, get in touch with us, leave us your thoughts. Excitingly, Chris, I'm thinking about getting a SIM card so that people can leave WhatsApp note, like voice notes.
Oh my God, yeah. Like a Raven hotline. Good, right?
Yes. So I will probably get on with that. And
I love that idea. That's great.
So that we can start incorporating people. We might even we could even do like every now and then, maybe for the final one of each season, do it on Twitter Spaces so that we can record that and have people talking along. We can even do a watch along. So that's where we are with like classic Thrones. So there are going to be 24 episodes where we are watching classic Thrones episodes and discussing that. That's pretty good, I think. I'm happy with that. You happy with how we're tackling that?
Yeah, because I think if we do like an episode in season 1, for example, we'll be able to talk about the context around it, but also focus on the episode. So like you're sort of getting I just feel like every single episode of Game of Thrones doesn't warrant like an hour deep dive. Like it could, that would be cool, but like we are busy men. We just can't do that. But also, like, if you're talking about, like, you know, the episode where Ned has his head chopped off, you can be informed by all the things that come before that in some extent, but it's really also just giving it a bit of laser focus, isn't it?
Yeah, and picking up on the Easter eggs as well. You know, when we watched that episode, you know, we didn't really know what the cat's paw dagger's influence was going to be.
Did not know we'd still be talking about that bloody dagger in 2020 too.
I know, exactly. And then obviously there are references to what's happened in Dance of the Dragons and House of the Dragon littered throughout Thrones as well. So it would be good to kind of pick up.
That's going to be really funny when we're doing a recap and we're like, oh, just found out through someone having a conversation that someone on House of the Dragon dies.
That season 4 of House of the Dragon has just been ruined for us all. Yeah. So that's that. I think that's how we'll tackle that, and that feels good. And maybe we'll pull them out of the hat. Maybe we'll do it. What do you think? Do we do it sequentially?
I think in order. Yeah.
Okay.
But that would require, well, at least on a season by season basis, knowing what each season's going to look like. So we could probably announce, the 3 episodes of season 1. Do season 1.
Why do we not put it to a Twitter vote?
Yeah, I think we should. We want to know what the listeners think are the sort of 3 quintessential episodes to discuss.
Okay, I'll do that. We'll do that today. Yeah, I'll put a Twitter poll up with all 10 episodes and the one with the most likes.
Love to hear why, particularly, because I think there's a case to be made that we do the first episode, but then pilot episodes are exposition hell. And is there actually a lot to list? Is there a lot there? I mean, it's a good episode. I think I've always said pilots are notoriously hard because their job is not really to entertain at all. And my recollection of Game of Thrones is pilot. I've seen it maybe 3 or 4 times. It's heavy going. It's hard to figure out. So there might be that people feel our kind of listeners will sort of say, actually, you really want to do this episode in the middle of the season. Far more interesting, far more going on. But yeah, let us know. I've got a few thoughts already, but we'll keep those to ourselves.
Yeah, I have as well. It's been so long as well. It'd be nice going through that and picking up on episodes that I've just completely forgotten about, but just that I love for so many reasons. Like, I regret now. I said something whilst House of the Dragon was on, where I said, such my top 3 episodes are X, Y, Z, and I already regret that because I'd forgotten Hold the Door, which is just like one of the most incredible moments. So yeah.
Weren't you also in episode 9 of House of the Dragon where they were like, open the door to let the dragon out? I got such Hodor flashbacks from that. I was like, oh my god, it's like so.
I didn't know. Yeah,
all this imagery of the door, kind of like this. Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting. I mean, I think a lot of season 1, what I loved was the stuff that wasn't in the books, and some of that is a lot of the dialogue between Robert Baratheon and Cersei. Neither of them are point of view characters in the books, so a lot of that dialogue is for the show, and it's some of the best acting. It really, really is. And I think we talk about that show as the wheels falling off the wagon towards the end, but we forget just how brilliant and incisive some of the scenes were, and so much character in some of those scenes. Robert wasn't in it that much, really. No. 6 episodes maybe. I'm really looking forward to jumping in some of those bits, and I'm also very much a staunch advocate for season 2 of Game of Thrones, which is very slow and still quite on the cheap. There's not a lot of like big bangs and stuff. It's a really great season though, and I think I'm really I'm looking forward to sort of going through the key parts of each season with you and our fantastic listeners.
And interesting, you should, about the wheels coming off, and it's the eternal kind of like question. And even I think Maisie Williams got dragged into it the other week as well. Where I think maybe her words got twisted a little bit. But there's a really good Twitter account which I'm looking for right now, actually, which is there's a US journalist who's a really good writer, really quite funny and witty and interesting, who'd never seen Thrones before, so tweeted his entire watch along. Like, it started, I think, way before Dragons came out. And his name's Eric Schultz or something like that. I'll have a look for it. I'll tweet it on the Dragoncast. But he has just got to the long night.
Oh, wow.
And has said, and obviously, like, loved it, but has gone, when does this get crap then? Because everyone was saying this season's rubbish, and I'm absolutely loving it so far. And I have to say, I agree with him. I think I still maintain that all of the hatred that was aimed at the final season by the fans was based on the fact that events didn't happen in the way that they imagined.
I think that too.
I think had Cersei and Jaime died at the hands of the Mountain or of the Hound or something like that, and had it not been Bran the Builder, or had Jon not just wandered off to do some whittling, people would have thought it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it's really interesting because on TikTok I get pushed towards a lot of accounts that are sharing clips from Game of Thrones. So I've been watching these out of context sort of 3-minute bits from all across the 8 seasons. The newer stuff is actually really good. All the reunions, all these characters reuniting is really good. I think what people I think the problem, and we can save all this for when we get knee deep into it down the line, closing that story was a logistical problem because it was just, you had so much to do and everyone had to have some sort of conclusive ending, and that is not how books are written. And so these characters, it's all written like some of them are side characters, and suddenly you're like, oh, we need to give Brienne an arc this season. And, you know, traditionally, like, you probably wouldn't have to do that in the book. You know, some people just stop reading the story. And so I think endings are just so hard, and they're very rarely satisfying. And I think we'll look back on it and I think we'll think, you know, you can tell they're going in the dark a little bit on this, but I think the overwhelming amount of dissatisfaction ended up being more noxious than any one person involved in it wanted it to be. Like, I was quite vocal about stuff I didn't like, but when there's like 10,000 of me, it must, if you're like working on the show, if you're acting in it, you must think, oh my God, like, this is awful. But no one wants anyone to feel bad about it. It's just saying, I just didn't see it ending like this. But then, as I said, how else do you tie it up? You've got to get rid of the White Walkers so you can go down to the King's Landing. You've got to get rid of some of the dragons because they're too strong.
It had to happen. Yeah,
exactly. It has to happen. It's a logistical problem. But I'm really looking forward to getting into all that. And I think, you know, in time, I think we'll look back on it a lot more favourably.
I believe so. Yeah, I really do think so. And so aside from that, there are other series that we are going to talk about as well. Now, a few of you may know, most of you probably won't, is that Chris and I did, along with Grace Dent, did a Succession podcast last season over on Previously On. I think we'll probably move that onto here this time. That's coming in spring next year at some point, which we're very much looking forward to. But I think, you know, there are so many similarities between House of the Dragon and Succession, it's almost not funny. So I think it's a good fit for everybody as well. And aside from that, there are a bunch of other shows that are coming. Last of Us, which is just like going to be amazing, has links to Game of Thrones universe as well. It's got Pedro Pascal and, oh my God,
Bella Ramsey.
Bella Ramsey, who played the
Lady of Bear Island.
Yeah, Lady of Bear Island. The one who killed the undead giant with the stab in the eye just before it took her down.
And then he sort of like fell on her, didn't he? He sort of crushed her to death. That was quite an amazing death, actually. It was quite weirdly unassuming for being crushed by a giant.
It wasn't, but it was fitting for her. And then she came back as a very briefly as a white, if I remember rightly. So the Last of Us is coming to HBO and Sky Atlantic very, very soon. That is going to be absolutely incredible. And we've got a plan for this, haven't we, Chris? So this was based on a video game. Yeah. So The Last of Us is brilliant. It's like it's a zombie story, really. Not too dissimilar to The Walking Dead, but it became iconic because the game on the PlayStation is just incredible, just absolutely fantastic, because it's got great acting on there. The storyline is fantastic. The gameplay is brilliant. Everything on it is just amazing. But Chris, you've never played it.
No, my gaming is limited to Tetris and sometimes Candy Crush. And so this kind of whole thing has passed me by.
Yeah, so we need to change that. So one episode is going to be Chris Mandle playing The Last of Us on PS5 and get ingratiating yourself into the gaming world and also the Last of Us universe.
Which way up?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You can. So I think you're going to come around to East Towers, and and we'll do that as well. So that's coming. There's also Interview with the Vampire, which is already airing in the States, which I think could be quite interesting.
Looks great. I'm hearing really good things about that.
It's got Jacob in it, who was, of course,
Grey Worm.
Grey Worm, the Unsullied, in that as well. I'm a big fan of those books. I say I'm a big fan. I've read them when I was a teenager, so they were all very exotic back then. And then this, right? So aside from all this, I mean, there's almost too much to do. I want us to go and talk about classic series of things as well. Of shows that we've either never seen or have not seen for since they first came out. And I've come up with 3 that I would like to talk about. We don't have to do all of them. We might just pick them up, pull them out of a hat, and go and do a rewatch. Have you had it? I asked you to do some homework.
Yeah, we did. I did do some homework. Well. Yeah. You go. Start with yours.
Okay. So I've seen 2 of them, and one of them I've never seen, but I hear about it all the time. So number 1 is one that I started watching, and then I can't remember why I stopped. I think Thrones got in the way or something like that. Is The Leftovers, which is Damon Lindelof's classic. You know, it's now gone down as an all-time classic, one of the best TV series ever made. Basically, if you've watched Avengers: Infinity War, you'll know what the plot is. But it's not done like that. There's no Thanos. 5% or 2% of the world's population just disappear in an instant. But it's in the real world. So and we don't really know what it is. We don't know if it's some kind of rapture. We don't know. We've got no idea what it is. But obviously the ramifications of that are enormous. And I think over 3 series, it just explores that and the effect it has on the remaining population. It stars Justin Theroux and Nora. Oh my God, she's such a great actress. What's her name? Hold on a second. It's got Christopher Eccleston in it, and who else? Carrie Coon. That's it, Carrie Coon.
Who went on to be in Avengers: Infinity War.
Yes, that's right. She plays a character called Nora.
Henchwoman.
Yeah, that's right. And it's got Margaret Qualley in it, Liv Tyler. It's got a great cast, absolutely fantastic cast. So I really want to talk about that. There's one that I haven't seen at all. It's The Americans, but I hear people talk.
Yeah.
I hear people talking about The Americans all the time, and like people whose opinions I respect. You know, like other great kind of like filmmakers and program makers and actors all kind of say how obsessed they were with it. And again, looking at the cast, like it's got Noah Emmerich in it, who I love. Noah Emmerich. It's got Matthew Rhys in it, Kerry Russell, and I barely know what it's about. I'm just going to go onto Wikipedia.
It's like they're like Russian agents, I think. So it's like a fake suburban life. This is really interesting though. So my boyfriend Rob is obsessed with The Americans. He thinks it is. I've not seen it. He's a huge fan. And in lockdown, that was his like big rewatch, and he's like, it is one of the best TV shows ever made in his eyes, and he's got good taste.
Wow.
So
clearly,
opportunity to get. I've never watched that. For me, that is like a very, very enticing. It is one of the greats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Okay. So that's a strong contender.
Very
and then my last one that I've seen before, absolutely adored, devoured every single episode, listened to all the podcasts, is Mad Men. It feels like it's just been a good length of time between it finishing and now, and I remember loving it so much. I feel as though a lot of it might feel a bit, ironically, a bit dated or a bit problematic now, but
I think the reverence for it might feel dated, because when it was out, like everything about it was just so sort of fetishized that like I think we might look at it with. I mean, I also Mad Men I think is probably in the top 3 of the great American TV shows, and we are like really keen to rewatch it anyway. But that is I think I'd be interested. I mean, I think it would be interesting to just go and watch it with a few years having passed.
I mean, I kind of blame Mad Men a little bit for my alcoholism.
Well, I was in men's magazines during that era, and it was just like people were drinking old fashions like they were tap water. Like it was just silly.
It just became. I just remember looking at that going, "Fucking hell, that looks great! I'm gonna go and drink neat whiskey. I'm gonna buy a bottle of J&B and just drink it." And I did. I think I was on Big Brother. Oh my god! Anyway, darkness.
That's for the after
what are your three?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. So we have one, kind of two crossovers there. So The Americans was on my list as one that I haven't watched that I really, really think is worth considering. Mad Men, I sort of thought about, but actually I'm less convinced because it is sort of a show. I mean, there's so many things in terms of Easter eggs. But I think it's good to have a show where there's a slightly larger sort of context around it, like a sort of theories. And I think with Mad Men, when when it was on, there was quite a lot of like, oh my God, is Don going to fall out the window in the final series? When you realise that that's just not the kind of show they made, I think it's harder to indulge in some of the fantasy in Mad Men. So my second one was actually Lost, which I hated the ending. Hated the ending, but I think Lost is such a fascinating relic of a TV show. For me, that was like the original, like the original obsession with television was with that show. And I remember, I think it was Monday nights it was on, or maybe Thursday. I used to work.
Fun fact for you.
Yeah.
Fun fact for you that Lost was responsible for the first ever simulcast in the UK. So that's
I remember that. I remember that.
The guy called Stuart Murphy, who is now the head of the National Opera, was at the time controller of Sky One, and we canvassed for it to happen, and he did. It was I think for the final season, or for the final
episode. It was the
final episode.
I went to a friend's house at 2 a.m. I was in my final year of uni when that happened, and I had an interview the next day at a university to do a master's. I had to get a train at 8 o'clock to Sheffield. And I'd watched the finale, and I'd like tried to go back to bed. And anyway, I didn't get offered a place at Sheffield University, put it that way. But I remember, I remember like when Lost's first season was out, I was working, I had a job at Morrison's, and I finished my shift, and my dad would have to tape the episode for me, and then I would come home after, I think I'd finish at like 11 p.m, come home, and then I'd watch it, and then I'd have to go straight to bed. So I think Lost is fascinating because, again, I think like there's so much about it that they didn't really know what show it was trying to be by the end. Like, I think some of the theories about it were better than what they wrote, which is kind of what happened with Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
But I also think
it was just guilty of its own success because they ended up stretching it out. And they threw themselves down so many cul-de-sacs.
It's a victim of a very different kind of television, which was, we have to make 24 episodes. So every season they'd go, oh, we're running out of people to do flashbacks on. Let's do one about the time Jack went on holiday. And you're like, this is fucking dreadful. And there were moments, particularly the first half, before they decided on the end point, where they were just buying time. And I think that is, you don't get that now. Like, we talk about House of the Dragon, and it's like, I would love 24 episodes. Can you imagine how much we could get with, and now
how much meat we'd get from that,
how much backstory. You wouldn't have to do time jumps, you wouldn't have to do this. You know, imagine Lost now, 10 episodes a season. It would be so weird. So I think there's a lot to unpack with that. My third one, because my first was technically The Americans, my third one is actually Friday Night Lights. American football, college football.
I've not seen that.
Michael B. Jordan, one of his early roles after being killed on the wire. It's got your man in it who goes out with Kirsten Dunst. Jesse Plemons, that was one of his first roles.
Oh my God, yeah.
This is cult. This is a great, again, Rob, my better half, obsessed with this show. He loves a sports underdog show. And this is about a college football team, and it's like bleak and beautiful and brutal. And I started it and never sort of picked it up. So that, again, if we didn't do it, like, he and I will be watching it anyway. But again, just...
It's got a good cast. Kyle Chandler's in it.
Yes.
Zach Gifford. Oh, yeah.
Woman who went on to do Nashville, what's she called?
Amy Teagarden? Connie Britton. Minka Kelly.
Connie Britton.
Yeah.
They also do a very cool thing, which I think was kind of revolutionary at the time, where they sort of rebooted it and they recast it. Because obviously everyone leaves the college or the school or whatever, right? So they do like a cast reset about 4 seasons in, which at the time, like, your stars were bigger than the IP, whereas obviously now, you know, the show and the intellectual property is the thing. Like, no one cares. You know, Captain America's the draw, not Chris Evans. Do you know what I mean? Like, they just replace, you know. So that would be kind of interesting. But I think the Americans would be really good. And
I agree. Look, I think there are some great ones there. Lost, yes, please.
I think Lost could be fun.
I love that show with all my heart. I think should we go with the Americans first? Because I really want to watch it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I've not watched it. You've not watched it.
Let's see what listeners, if they've got any strong thoughts as well. But let
us know. We're not going to. We won't start this week. Because we've got a hell of a lot to do, which I'll tell you about now.
The key thing was we wanted something we hadn't seen before, right? And there's quite a lot of things like we're doing Sopranos right now, and that's been like I'd never seen it before, and I think it's just incredible. And then also The Wire, which we did last year, which again is so The Wire, Mad Men, Sopranos for me are like the trifecta, the pinnacle of American like cable dramas. And I could talk, you know, I just think with something like The Sopranos, I'm like, I wish I was like doing what I do now when that show was out. I'd love to be writing about it because it was just, fascinating show.
But it was just unknown. I remember it. It was just completely, no one knew what the hell they were watching.
And I know, I know we're on the penultimate season. I know the ending. All I know is that it's divisive. I can't wait to get to the ending and just sort of. Well,
you know what happens in the ending? Do you?
No, I just know that it's. I think it fades to black or something, and it's just nothing's resolved or something like that.
Okay, I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but immediately once you've watched it, like just go and sit in a quiet room for an hour, and then come back and read. There's a great interview, I think, either with Rolling Stone or Vanity Fair, with what's your man. David Chase.
David Chase.
No, David Chase was The Wire, wasn't it? No, David Chase was The Wire, wasn't he?
I thought he did Sopranos as well.
Oh, did he? It is David Chase. So he'd done a great interview all about the final scene.
The other thing that we noticed is we were on season 5 of The Sopranos, and Matthew Weiner, who went on to create Mad Men, is a supervising writer on the 5th season of The Sopranos.
He cut his teeth on it.
Cut his teeth on it. It makes so much sense, sort of thematically, like spiritually, they're very similar. These shows.
And I mean, Michael Imperioli is who's like brilliant, amazing as Christopher is in the next series of The White Lotus.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to The White Lotus as well. Actually.
I'm very much looking forward to that. Right.
Okay.
You know what? I think we've done enough for this episode. Coming up, though, just to give you a bit of forewarning, next week, so all this stuff that we've talked about is all well and good, and we'll wrap up. So next week, we'll talk about what episodes we're going to do from season 1 and when. But excitingly, we will also have an interview with Chris. Tell the listeners, who are we lucky enough to be speaking to next week?
We have the one and only Graham McTavish coming on the podcast next week.
Hey!
Very excited to have him on the podcast. Sir Harold Westerling, obviously, quit with dignity in the penultimate episode of House of the Dragon. He left the King's Guard. I think there's quite a lot to talk to him about because I want to know more about the character. We've not seen loads of him, and so I'm hoping we can get a bit of inside trading on what's going on, where he thinks he's going to be next season. I presume he's coming back. I presume he sails to Dragonstone and supports the Blacks. But we don't know.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you?
He must be. That must be it. That must be the plan, right?
Yeah, well, he's going to sharpen his sword. So Kristen Cole's going to have a fight on his hands. That's what I think.
Oh, so I'm really excited to have him on. That'd be great.
Yeah, very clear. If you've got any questions, get in touch. As ever, the ways to get in touch with us are on Twitter at Dragoncast_pod. Leave us a comment below in the YouTube channel or email dragoncast@daftdoris.com. Now, that's it for this week, excitingly, except coming up maybe Thursday, maybe Friday, is a conversation I had last week with Shope Dirisu, who is the lead actor who plays Elliot in the Skylantic's Gangs of London, which has just gone absolutely crazy. I went to the premiere of it. It's gone. If you're missing a bit of bloodthirsty violence and allegiances in the world at the moment, in House of Dragons' break, then Gangs of London is for you. Also, Shope, huge Dragons, huge Thrones fan. So
do we think
dead keen on?
Do we think Shope could be cast in House of Dragon?
Funny you should mention that, Chris, because we do talk about that.
Oh, hell yeah.
We do talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, so find out more. That'll be a bonus episode for you later on this week. Until then, Chris, Dracarys, my friend.
Dracarys.